The most devastating weapon of the First Age was not a legion of Balrogs, nor the unholy sorcery of its Dark Lord. It was a single, sentient being whose words could shatter minds and rewrite memories. Before Smaug, before Ancalagon the Black, there was Glaurung, the father of dragons. His ambition was not merely to burn cities or hoard gold, but to become a living vessel for his master's malice, a goal that makes the quest for the One Ring seem a minor squabble. This is the story of how a beast of fire and scale became a master of psychological warfare, and how his hypnotic evil was used to orchestrate the single greatest tragedy in the history of men. In the blackest pits of Angband, the Dark Lord Morgoth brooded. His grand strategy to overwhelm the elves of Beleriand with sheer numbers, with endless legions of orcs, had failed. The disciplined armies of the Noldor, aflame with the light of Valinor and commanded by the sons of Feanor, had proven too resilient. Even his Masur spirits of fire, the Valaraukar, the Balrogs, could be withstood. He needed a new terror. He needed a living engine of war. Morgoth could not create life from nothing. That power belonged to the One alone. But he could take life and twist it, corrupting it into a mockery of its true form. From some ancient and unknown reptilian stock, he began his foulest work. He poured his own will, his own hatred for the children of Ilúvatar, into the flesh of his creation. He gave it a spirit of fire, a hide of iron-like scales, and a cunning born of his own dark mind. He was the first of the Uruk-hai, the fire drakes of the north. After 100 years of secret labor, Glaurung emerged. He was still young, a mere half-grown whelp by the measure of his kind, but impatient and full of fire. Unbidden by his master, he slithered forth from the Gates of Angband, a river of living flame pouring onto the green plains of Ardgalen, the lands that lay before the elven fortress of Hithlum. The elves were terrified. They had never conceived of such a creature. Yet this first assault was premature. Glaurung's scales had not yet hardened to their full strength. Fingon, prince of the Noldor, led a company of mounted archers against him. They circled the beast, loosing a storm of arrows that found purchase in his softer hide. Stung and infuriated, Glaurung could not endure the assault, and fled back to the fortress of his master. Morgoth was displeased by his servant's impatience, but the trial was a resounding success. A new fear had been unleashed upon the world, a dread for which the elves had no answer. But physical fire was only the first, and crudest, of his weapons. How could a creature of brute force learn to wield a power more insidious than any flame? For almost 200 years, Glaurung was not seen again. He lay coiled in the depths of Angband, growing in size and in cunning, his power nurtured by the malice of Morgoth himself. Outside, the Noldor maintained their vigilant siege, and a long peace settled over Beleriand. Hope grew, but it was a false peace, a quiet breath before the storm. In the year 455 of the First Age, the storm broke. This was the Dagor Bragollach, the Battle of Sudden Flame. And at the head of the inferno, now grown to a colossal size, was Glaurung the Golden. He was a mountain in motion, a vast, wingless serpent of living fire. His golden scales were now impenetrable to any arrow or spear, and the heat of his presence alone was enough to wither his foes. He was no longer a mere beast. He was the vanguard of a new age of war, a living battering ram that shattered the centuries-long siege of Angband in a single night. He led the armies of orcs and Balrogs deep into the lands of the elves, burning everything in his path. The green and beautiful plains of Ardgalen were scoured so thoroughly by his fire that they were forever after known as Anfaglith, the gasping dust. He broke the armies of the sons of Feanor, and drove back the forces of Fingolfin, High King of the Noldor. For the first time, the full might of Morgoth's chief weapon was revealed. He was not just a force of nature. Within his reptilian eyes was a calculating evil, a strategic mind that directed the lesser creatures of Angband with a terrible purpose. He was the field commander of damnation. His physical power reached its zenith in the cataclysmic battle known as the Nirnaeth Arnuidiad, the Battle of Unnumbered Tears. Here, the last great alliance of elves, men, and dwarves gathered to challenge Morgoth for the final time. Hope, for one brief moment, was rekindled in the hearts of the free peoples. But Morgoth met them with the entirety of his strength, and when the battle was at its fiercest, he unleashed his final reserve. From the Gates of Angband came Glaurung, and with him a brood of lesser dragons, his spawn. The great worm was now of such a size that the army of the Noldor faltered before him in terror. He smashed through the lines of elves and men, until he came upon the host of the dwarves of Belegost. The Naugrim, clad in their heavy mail and great grim-faced steel masks, were able to withstand his fire in a way no others could. They formed a grim circle around him, their resilience a shock to the great dragon. Their great axes, swung with the legendary strength of their race, bit deep, hewing at his iron-hard hide. Enraged, Glaurung struck down their king, Azagal, and crawled over his body. But with his last breath, the dwarf lord thrust a knife deep into the dragon's belly, gouging a grievous wound. Roaring in agony, Glaurung fled the field, his writhing body crushing all in his path, his spawn following in his wake. His retreat came too soon for the dwarves to claim victory, but his flight had shaken the resolve of Morgoth's army. It created a chaos that, for a moment, offered a chance. Yet it was not enough. The battle was already a catastrophic loss. A betrayal from within had sealed the Union's fate. The field was won for Angband. His physical power was now proven beyond doubt. But Morgoth's true design for this creature was only just beginning to unfold. For Glaurung's greatest victories would not be won on the battlefield, but in the ruins of a fallen city, and within the labyrinth of a single human mind. Decades passed. The great Elven kingdom of Nargothrond had long remained hidden from Morgoth, its people safe in their cavernous halls carved by the petty dwarves long ago. But their safety was undone by pride, the pride of a man named Turin Turambar, the tragic hero of the House of Hador. Seeking glory in open war, Turin persuaded the elves to build a great stone bridge over the river Narog, leading directly to the gates of their city. It was a fatal error, an invitation. Morgoth, his eye ever watchful, now knew the path to his enemy's heart. He did not send an army of orcs alone. He dispatched Glaurung. The elves of Nargothrond, led by Turin, met their foe on the field of Tumhalad. They fought with valor, but they were hopelessly outmatched. Glaurung, at the head of a vast orc host, annihilated them. Turin was left standing alone on the field of slaughter. He raced back to the city, hoping to cast down the bridge, but he was too late. The great worm was already upon it, his bulk so immense that the mighty structure groaned beneath his weight. He smashed through the famed gates of Felagund as if they were made of kindling. What followed was not a battle, but a massacre. Glaurung and the orcs ravaged the halls, slaying all they found, taking many captive for the slave pits of Angband. When the slaughter was done, the dragon drove out the orcs, claimed the entire city for himself, and gathered every last piece of gold, silver, and gemstone. He piled it all into a great mound in the deepest, largest hall, and there he made his bed, a dragon king upon a throne of stolen treasure. It was into this scene of silent, glittering ruin that Turin Turambar finally came, his sword drawn, his heart burning with rage and grief. He found the dragon lying upon his hoard, but as he prepared to charge, the great beast opened his eyes, and Turin was caught. He was frozen in place, held motionless by the sheer force of the dragon's will. This was the infamous dragon spell, a power of hypnotic suggestion that paralyzed the body and laid bare the mind. Glaurung did not move to attack. He had no need. His words were now his sharpest claws. "Hail, son of Húrin," the dragon hissed, his voice slithering into Turin's mind. "Well met. A master of masters you are, a captain of your own fate." The words dripped with ancient venom. He began to weave a tapestry of lies, mingled with just enough truth to make them barbed. He spoke of Turin's mother, Morwen, and his sister, Nienor, whom Turin had not seen since he was a boy. Glaurung painted a picture of their life in Dorlomin, not as one of grim endurance, but of wretched slavery, starvation, and misery. It was a lie, a carefully crafted poison designed for a single purpose: to divert Turin from the elven captives of Nargothrond, and especially from the maiden Finduilas, who loved him, and who was at that very moment being led away to her death. "If you had not lingered here," the worm whispered, "you might have saved them. Now they suffer. Go to them, if you can. Your welcome will be cold." The spell was broken, but the lies had taken root. Consumed by a guilt and fear manufactured by the dragon, Turin abandoned all thought of the captives. He turned his back on Finduilas' cries for help, a sound that would haunt him forever, and fled Nargothrond, racing north on a fool's errand. He was a puppet now, his strings pulled by the father of lies. Glaurung had not merely conquered a city. He had captured a soul, and set in motion the final, devastating act of a curse far older and deeper than himself. But what was this curse? And how could a dragon, a creature of brute force and fire, become its most sophisticated and cruel instrument? To understand this, we must leave Turin to his grief-stricken flight, and follow the very people he had just been tricked into abandoning. For news of Nargothrond's fall eventually reached the hidden kingdom of Doriath, and with it, the ears of Turin's mother, Morwen. Filled with a terrible dread, and against all counsel, she and her daughter Nienor set out on a desperate journey south, seeking any sign of the son and brother they had lost so long ago. They were not heading towards an empty ruin. Glaurung, coiled on his gold, felt their approach. He was not a mindless beast. He was Morgoth's viceroy in the west, and the Children of Húrin were his special charge. His goal was not simply to kill them. That would be too merciful. His purpose was to break them, to use them as the final hammer blow to shatter the spirit of his true target, Turin. So as they drew near the despoiled lands of Nargothrond, he unleashed a new weapon, not fire, but shadow. From the river he drew up a great and evil vapor, a foul, choking fog that reeked of the dragon's malice. This was the dragon reek. It blinded the eyes, confused the mind, and sowed terror in the heart. Morwen's small company was scattered, lost in the impenetrable gloom. Horses panicked, riders were thrown, and the elves were separated from the women they had sworn to protect. Nienor, in the chaos, was cut off from her mother, lost and utterly alone. She wandered blindly until she found herself on the very brink of the chasm of the Naurog. And there, on the opposite bank, waiting for her as if by some grim appointment, was the great dragon himself. He had come forth from the gates and was now perched on the western cliffs, his golden scales gleaming even in the gray murk. He did not need to cross the chasm. He simply fixed her with his lidless, serpentine gaze. She was a woman of great courage, a true daughter of the House of Hador, and she stared back, challenging him, her heart hammering against her ribs. But this was a battle of will she could never, ever win. Glaurung did not need to speak. He did not need to weave a tapestry of lies as he had with her brother. He unleashed the full, naked power of his mind upon hers. This was no simple spell of freezing terror. This was an unmaking. A black, silent darkness swept over her mind, wiping away every memory, every name, every love, and every fear. He erased her past. He erased her. When the assault was over, she knew nothing. Not her name, not her quest, not even the very concept of language. She was a blank page, a beautiful, wild thing left shivering in the woods. He had done his work. He had not killed her. He had done something infinitely worse. He had preserved the body but destroyed the person, turning her into a living, breathing weapon to be used in the final act of Morgoth's curse. What becomes of a person with no past? What horrors might they unknowingly commit? Glaurung had now played both brother and sister-like pieces on a chessboard. He had sent the brother away with a mind full of lies, and now the sister into the wild with a mind full of nothing. He was patient. He knew, with the ancient, malevolent wisdom of his kind, that fate, now twisted and bent by his will, would inevitably bring these two broken souls together again, and their meeting would be a catastrophe far greater than the fall of any city. The worm had not only stolen a kingdom's gold, he had stolen a family's soul, and was now preparing to spend it, But this raises a terrifying question. What exactly is the curse of Morgoth? Is it just a string of bad luck? A prophecy of doom, whispered in a dark throne room? Or is it something far more sinister? An active, intelligent malevolence. A shadow that thinks, that hunts, that hates. To understand the true horror facing Turin and his sister, we must look past the dragon. We must go back to the very moment this poison was first injected into the world. We must go back to their father, Húrin. Captured after the Nirnaeth Arnoediad, the battle of unnumbered tears, Húrin defied Morgoth to his very face, refusing to reveal the location of the hidden elven kingdom of Gondolin. For his defiance, Morgoth forged a unique and terrible punishment. He would not kill Húrin. He would chain him to the highest peak of the Thangorodrim and grant him a terrible gift, the ability to see and hear the fates of his family. But there was a twist. Húrin would see the world only through Morgoth's eyes. He would witness every event, but every good deed would appear as a folly, every act of love as a weakness, every hope as a prelude to despair. He was forced to watch as the Dark Lord's malice warped the very fabric of fate around his children. The curse, then, is not chance. It is this corrupted vision, this hateful will, given power over the world. And Glaurung? He is not merely its servant. He is its focusing lens, the physical instrument through which Morgoth's sight becomes reality, twisting every path, poisoning every choice, ensuring that every step Turin and Nienor take, no matter how noble their intent, leads them deeper into the darkness their father is forced to watch, helpless and screaming. And so, while one child wanders the forest without a memory, the other walks a path paved with his own well-intentioned disasters. Turin, believing his mother and sister were enslaved in the north, made for his childhood home of Dor Lomin. He found it occupied by Easterling invaders, given the land as a reward by Morgoth. They ruled with an iron fist, enslaving the last remnants of Húrin's people. Here, the curse began to tighten its grip once more. Driven by rage and grief, Turin sought news of his family from the new lord, Broda. He learned a truth more bitter than any lie Glaurung could have devised. His mother had not been captured. She had left Dor-lómin of her own free will long ago, seeking him. And she had gone south, towards Nargothrond. The realization struck him like a physical blow. The dragon's lie was not to send him on a fool's errand, but to make him abandon his family at the precise moment they were walking into the dragon's jaws. His desperate rush north to save them was the very act that had damned them. The curse was working perfectly. In his despairing rage, he ignited a hopeless and bloody revolt, killing Broda and his men. But it was a pointless slaughter, a spasm of grief that achieved nothing. He only succeeded in bringing down the wrath of the Easterlings on the few remaining people of his father's house, forcing him to flee once more, a pariah with even more blood on his hands. He was truly a man without a home, haunted by a failure so profound it threatened to swallow his very sanity. Fleeing his past, Turin found his way to the forest of Brethil. There, among the hardy woodsmen, he took a new name, Turambar, Master of Doom, defying the fate that hunted him. And for a time, it seemed he had succeeded. The curse, for a moment, held its breath. Then, one day, he found her, a girl, weeping on a grave, clad only in her long hair, with no memory of her name or her past. He called her Ninjal, the Maid of Tears. Unknowing, the brother had found his sister. The trap, so patiently set by Glaurung and his master, was about to close. They fell in love, these two broken people, who saw in each other a refuge from the storm. Turambar, the Master of Doom, believed he had finally found a joy that could conquer his fate. Ninjal, the girl with no past, believed she had finally found a future. They were married, and Brethil knew a brief, fragile peace under their protector. But Morgoth does not forget, and his instruments are patient. Glaurung the Golden stirred from his hoard in Nargothrond. He came to Brethil, a walking inferno, to finish the game. Turambar, to protect his new home and his new love, went to face the beast that had shadowed his entire life. At the ravine of Cabed-in-Aras, he lay in wait, the black sword Gurthang in his hand. He succeeded. With a final, heroic thrust, he slew the father of dragons. But Glaurung had one last gift of venom to spend. As Ninjal rushed to her fallen husband, the dragon, with his dying breath, opened his terrible eyes. He broke the spell of forgetfulness that had shrouded her mind, and spoke the truth in a voice of pure, triumphant malice. "Hail, Nienor, daughter of Húrin," the worm hissed. "I give thee joy that thou hast found thy brother at last." In that instant, she knew everything. The man she loved, the father of her unborn child, was the brother she had sought. The curse had not been broken. It had been fulfilled in the most horrific way imaginable. Overcome by a grief and shame too profound for any soul to bear, she fled to the edge of the chasm and cast herself into the raging waters below. The Maid of Tears was no more. When Turin awoke and learned the truth, the last remnants of his spirit shattered. He had run from his doom his entire life, only to build it with his own hands. He spoke to his own sword, asking it to take his life and grant him oblivion. And it is said a cold voice answered him from the steel, accepting the task. He placed the hilt upon the ground and fell upon the point of Gurthang, the blade that had slain Beleg, his friend, and now, at last, its master. So ended Turin Turambar, the most tragic of all the heroes of men. The story of the Children of Húrin is a testament to the long shadow of evil, but also to the unbreakable defiance of the human spirit, which will fight its fate even unto the bitter end. Their tragedy is but a single, powerful echo in the grand symphony of the First Age. There are countless other tales of valor, betrayal, and hope waiting to be told. To hear them all, and to journey with us, from the dawn of creation to the last stand against the darkness, subscribe to the _Silmarillion_Chronicles. The legend is just beginning.